Welcome to the Story Castle. Here at the Story Castle, we dive into the most magical, twisted, and inspiring tales from around the world. Today, we're uncovering Cinderella's show. Once upon a time, in a realm where magic and mystery intertwined, the story of Cinderella wasn't as we've always heard it. In this retelling, Cinderella wasn't just one girl, she was many. A collection of women whose stories echoed across cultures and time, each carrying their own unique twist on the tale. This is the story of how the glass slipper shattered across the world and became a mirror for secrets untold. A whisper in the wind. It begins in a place beyond the boundaries of any map, in a hidden archive where stories are born. A mysterious figure named the storykeeper wandered its infinite halls, pulling scrolls and books from shelves that stretched endlessly into the sky. One day, the storykeeper paused before an ancient locked chest, engraved with the word Cinderella. Whispers echoed as the chest was opened. "The truth must be known," the storykeeper said, unraveling scrolls from far corners of the world. What emerged were not one, but many Cinderellas. Each story held shocking secrets, and together they wove a tapestry of intrigue, betrayal, and empowerment. In the heart of a dense ancient forest, where sunlight rarely touched the ground, there was a small, decrepit cottage that seemed as much a prisoner of the tangled thorns as its inhabitant. Here lived Ashen, a girl whose life was one of shadow and solitude. Unlike the tales that would one day be spun about her, Ashen was not meek, nor was she timid. She had sharp eyes, an even sharper wit, and a heart tempered by years of neglect. But Ashen bore a terrible curse. To anyone who did not truly value her, who failed to see beyond her dirty face and soot-streaked hands, she was invisible. Not literally, but worse. Their gaze would slide over her as though she didn't exist. Her stepmother, Frau Gerda, and her stepsisters, Ilse and Brunhilde, had taken full advantage of this. To them, she was nothing more than an unseen servant, a ghost. They didn't bother to acknowledge her, even as she scrubbed floors until her hands bled, or cooked meals they never thanked her for. Ashen didn't despise them, she pitied them. For while they only saw a servant, she saw the cracks in their facade. Ilse's desperation for attention, Brunhilde's cruel jealousy, and Frau Gerda's relentless fear of losing what little control she had over her world. They were prisoners, too, though none of them would ever admit it. For years, Ashen endured, not because she was weak, but because she was waiting. Her mother had once told her, "In every curse lies the seed of its undoing. The trick is to nurture it carefully, to wait until the moment is ripe to break it." Her mother, before her untimely death, had spoken often of secrets hidden in the family's bloodline. But those words had been veiled, spoken in riddles, leaving Ashen to puzzle over their meaning alone. One stormy night, years after her mother's death, Ashen fate took a turn. She was cleaning the ashes from the hearth when a strange chill filled the room and the fire flickered unnaturally. Turning, she gasped as a ghostly figure emerged from the shadows. It was her mother, her form pale and shimmering like moonlight on water. "Mother?" Ashen whispered, her voice trembling. "Is it truly you?" Her mother's ghost nodded, her expression sorrowful. "I have come to tell you of your curse, my daughter, and of the choice that lies ahead." Ashen swallowed hard. "Why was I cursed?" "It was a punishment," her mother said, her voice soft but firm. "Our bloodline is tied to magic, and generations ago, one of our ancestors used it selfishly. The curse was placed upon us to ensure that we would never again take our gifts for granted. To break it, you must show the world your worth, not by force, but by letting them see the truth of who you are. But how? Ashen Putle asked. No one even sees me as a person. Her mother's ghost reached out, though her hand passed through Ashen Putle's cheek like mist. There is a way, a hidden power within you, tied to our bloodline. But the price of unlocking it is steep. It requires a sacrifice of love. You must decide if you are willing to pay it. Before Ashen Putle could ask more, her mother's form dissolved into a cascade of sparks, leaving her alone once more. The only sign of the encounter was a faint, silvery glow that lingered in the room. The next day, news swept through the village. A grand ball was to be held at the royal palace. The prince, burdened by his own secret sorrows, sought a bride. Every eligible maiden was invited. Ashen Putle's stepsisters were giddy with excitement, but Ashen Putle saw an opportunity. The ball would be the perfect chance to discover the truth about her family's magic, and perhaps her mother's cryptic warning. In the icy expanse of frost-bitten Russia, the harsh winters forged not just the land, but the people as well. Among them was Zolushka, a young woman who lived not in rags, but in the smoky warmth of a blacksmith's forge. Her father, once a renowned smith, had passed away, leaving her at the mercy of her stepmother, who cared little for Zolushka's talent and even less for her happiness. Zolushka was no ordinary smith. Her hands, calloused from years of hard labor, had a gift that defied explanation. She could forge objects of immense beauty and power, tools, weapons, and treasures imbued with magic. But her stepmother, driven by greed, saw only an opportunity. She forced Zolushka to create intricate works for the nobles, treasures that would line her own pockets with gold. One bitterly cold evening, Zolushka worked late in the forge. The glowing embers of the furnace cast flickering shadows on the walls as she worked on her most ambitious creation yet, a pair of unbreakable glass boots. These boots, crafted from enchanted crystal and tempered in the midnight flame, held a powerful secret. They could reveal hidden truths, forcing anyone who wore them to confront their lies and misdeeds. Zolushka hadn't crafted them for wealth or glory. She had crafted them as a statement, a symbol of justice. The Tsar of Russia, a ruler as cold and calculating as the winters themselves, announced a grand ball in honor of his son, the prince. The purpose was clear: to find the young man a bride. Invitations were sent to every noble family, promising a night of opulence and splendor. Zolushka's stepmother, eager to secure a place in the royal court, saw this as an opportunity to flaunt her ill-gotten treasures. But Zolushka had no interest in the ball. She focused on her work, hammering and shaping the enchanted boots late into the night. It wasn't until the day of the ball, when a courier from the palace arrived, that she realized her stepmother had offered one of her prized creations, a silver tiara, to the royal family as a gift. The courier demanded Zolushka deliver it herself, giving her no choice but to attend. Wrapped in a simple cloak, Zolushka entered the grand palace. The ball was a spectacle of wealth and excess, with shimmering gowns, glittering jewels, and tables overflowing with food. Yet, as she moved through the crowd, her sharp eyes noticed something troubling. Treasures stolen from her forge adorned the royal family and their guests. The prince wore a golden amulet that Zolushka had crafted to protect its wearer from harm. The Tsar's daughter displayed a sapphire necklace meant to shield against deception. Even the Tsar himself carried a jeweled cane that Zolushka had designed as a gift for an elderly merchant. These were items she had forged with care and purpose, now flaunted as symbols of stolen privilege. Zolushka's anger burned hotter than the forge's flames. She knew she couldn't let this injustice continue. She reached into her satchel and pulled out one of the enchanted glass boots. Placing it strategically at the base of the grand staircase, she disappeared into the shadows, her cloak hiding her from view. As the ball drew to a close, the glass boot was discovered. Its beauty captivated the prince, who declared that whoever fit the boot would be his bride. But when he placed it on his own foot in jest, the enchantment activated. A spell unlike any the court had ever seen unfolded before their eyes. The glass boot forced the prince to confess his father's corruption, the family's theft of treasures, and the lies they had told to maintain their power. His voice echoed through the grand hall, spilling secrets that left the nobles in stunned silence. One by one, others tried to remove the boot, but the spell extended its grip. The courtiers who had benefited from the Tsar's greed began to confess their own complicity. The grand ball devolved into chaos as the truth unraveled. From her hidden perch, Zolushka watched the scene unfold. She felt no pity for the royal family or their guests. Instead, she felt a sense of justice, a vindication of her work and her struggle. When the enchantment finally subsided, the royal court was in disarray. The Tsar, humiliated and exposed, could do nothing but beg for forgiveness from his people. The glass boot, still glowing faintly with its magical aura, was returned to Zolushka, who stepped forward at last. "I am no guest," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I am a smith, a creator, and the rightful owner of what you have stolen." The crowd gasped as they realized who she was. The prince, humbled by the magic he had experienced, knelt before her. "What do you want?" he asked. But Zolushka did not ask for his hand in marriage or a place in the palace. Instead, she demanded reparations for the villagers whose lives had been ruined by the Tsar's greed. She called for the return of all stolen goods and the end of the royal family's exploitation. She waited until her stepmother and stepsisters had left for the ball, then made her way to the garden behind the house. There, hidden beneath an old oak tree, was a patch of wildflowers her mother had planted long ago. Among them was a single glowing bloom, her mother's magic. Ashen plucked the flower, and as she did, her rags transformed into a dress of shimmering silver and gold. On her feet appeared the glass slippers, smooth and delicate, but stronger than steel. These were no ordinary shoes. They carried the magic of her bloodline, the key to unlocking truths that had been buried for generations. When Ashen arrived at the palace, no one recognized her. She stepped into the grand ballroom, her dress catching the light like fireflies on a summer night. The crowd parted for her, enchanted by her presence. Even the prince, who had danced with countless women that evening, was drawn to her as if by some invisible thread. They danced, and as they did, Ashen asked him questions, subtle but probing, about his family, his kingdom, and the history of his bloodline. She could sense the weight he carried, the sadness hidden behind his charming smile. "What is it you truly seek, Your Highness?" she asked softly. The prince hesitated, then replied, "Someone who sees me. Not the crown, not the wealth, me." For a moment Ashen felt a pang of guilt. He was kind, and his sorrow was genuine. But she couldn't afford to let her guard down. She wasn't here for love. She was here for answers. As the clock struck midnight, the magic of the glass slippers activated. They began to glow, illuminating the ballroom in a blinding light. For a brief moment, Ashen Putle saw visions, a dark secret tied to the royal family, a curse that mirrored her own, and a thread of destiny connecting them both. The prince, too, saw something. Though what, she could not be sure. Panic gripped her. The visions were overwhelming, and she knew she couldn't stay. She fled, the prince calling after her. But instead of leaving a glass slipper behind, she left something else. A challenge. When the prince found her slipper the next day, he discovered an inscription carved into the delicate glass. It read, "If you wish to see me again, look not with your eyes, but with your heart." The prince, moved and intrigued, set out on a journey, not just to find her, but to unravel the mystery of her words. Meanwhile, Ashen Putle waited, unsure of what lay ahead, but determined to see the challenge through. And so, the Ash Maiden's tale began, not as a story of love at first sight, but as a story of courage, sacrifice, and the quest to break curses both seen and unseen. Under the vast expanse of Persia's golden sands, where the sun kissed the earth and the stars told stories to those who could read them, lived a girl named Mapari. Her name, meaning like a fairy, was both a blessing and a cruel irony. Mapari's family, once revered astrologers of the court, had been cast out from the kingdom, accused of treason for a crime they did not commit. Their downfall came not from guilt, but from the jealous schemes of those who coveted their knowledge and influence. Mapari's childhood was one of exile and whispers. She lived in a humble tent at the edge of the desert with her grandmother, Shirin, a woman as wise as the stars themselves. Shirin taught Mapari how to chart the constellations, read the movements of the planets, and uncover the secrets written in the heavens. It was under her grandmother's guidance that Mapari discovered a powerful truth. The stars held not only the fate of nations, but her own destiny as well. One fateful night, while poring over her star charts by the light of a flickering oil lamp, Mapari noticed something extraordinary. The stars revealed a rare, celestial alignment, one that foretold a moment of great upheaval and opportunity in the palace. Her fate, it seemed, was intertwined with the royal families, and the stars whispered of betrayal, justice, and a reckoning. But how could a girl cast aside by society seek justice against those who had destroyed her family? Mapari was not one to sit idly by. Though her stepmother, a bitter widow of noble blood, often treated her as a servant, Mapari saw her for what she truly was, a pawn in the greater political games of the palace. This realization only fueled Mapari's resolve. If she could uncover the truth of her family's betrayal, she could clear their name and reclaim their honor. Her grandmother had always warned her, "Destiny is not given. It is taken. And sometimes, to take it, you must become invisible." With this in mind, Mapari devised a daring plan. The great Nowruz festival was approaching, a celebration that drew people from every corner of the kingdom to the palace. Nobles, merchants, and servants alike would gather under the dazzling decorations and flowing silks. Among the revelry, Mapari saw her chance to slip into the heart of the palace unnoticed. When the night of Nowruz arrived, the palace was a vision of splendor. Lanterns hung like fallen stars, bathing the marble halls in golden light. Music and laughter filled the air, and dancers in vibrant silks twirled like flames. Mapari, disguised as a maid, made her way through the palace gates, her heart pounding with anticipation. Her disguise was simple but effective. A plain cloak over her slender frame, her face partially obscured by a scarf. But beneath her cloak, Mapari carried something extraordinary: golden anklets adorned with celestial symbols. These anklets, passed down through generations of her family, were more than just jewelry. They held a secret, a map of sorts, encoded in the intricate patterns of stars and constellations etched into the metal. The map, she believed, would lead her to the truth about the royal family's betrayal. As the festival reached its peak, Mapari slipped into the grand hall where the court had gathered. Her gaze swept across the room, taking in the opulent surroundings: the gilded walls, the towering columns, the courtiers draped in jewels and silks. But it wasn't the wealth that caught her attention. It was the people. She watched the prince, a figure of regal poise, but with eyes that betrayed weariness. She noted the ministers, their smiles sharp and their laughter hollow. And she saw the queen, whose gaze was as cold and distant as the stars. When the musicians struck up a lively tune, Mapari seized her moment. She stepped into the circle of dancers, her golden anklets jingling softly with every movement. Her steps were graceful, deliberate, each one drawing the court's attention like a moth to a flame. The symbols on her anklets gleamed in the firelight, catching the eye of the prince. He leaned toward his advisor, whispering, "Who is she?" "I don't recognize her." The advisor shook his head. "A performer, perhaps. But those anklets, those symbols, they look familiar." As Mapari danced, she felt the weight of their stares, but she did not falter. Her purpose was clear: to plant the seed of curiosity, to ensure they noticed the anklets and the message they carried. The prince's gaze lingered on her, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. Mapari felt a flicker of guilt. He seemed kind, sincere even, but she pushed the thought aside. She wasn't here for love. She was here for justice. As the dance ended, Mapari slipped away, her movements swift and silent. But as she fled the grand hall, one of her golden anklets came loose, falling to the polished marble floor with a soft clang. She hesitated for a split second, her instincts screaming at her to retrieve it. But she knew better. Leaving it behind was part of the plan. The prince, seeing the anklet lying abandoned, picked it up. His fingers traced the intricate symbols, his brow furrowing in thought. "This isn't ordinary jewelry," he murmured. "There's something more to this." His advisors crowded around him, each offering their own interpretations of the strange symbols. Some claimed it was a love token, others a message. But the prince, holding the anklet up to the light, said, "No, this is a challenge. Whoever she is, she's left us a puzzle to solve." Back in her humble tent, Mapari removed her remaining anklet and studied it carefully. She felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear. The first step of her plan had succeeded, but the hardest part was yet to come. The anklet she had left behind would set the court on a path to uncovering truths they had long buried. And when they did, she would be waiting. Under the vast Persian sky, Mapari sat with her grandmother, who looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. "You've set the stars in motion," Shirin said softly. "Now you must be ready for what they reveal." "I am ready, grandmother," Mapari replied, her voice steady. "The truth will shine brighter than any star." And so Mapari's journey continued, not as a girl seeking love, but as a warrior seeking justice, guided by the stars and the echoes of her family's honor. In the bustling harbor town of Chunahai, life revolved around the rhythm of the sea. Boats came and went, carrying the town's lifeblood of trade and fish. Amidst this vibrant scene lived Yesen, a young fisherwoman with a mysterious connection to the ocean. While others saw only the surface of the waves, Yesen felt the sea's whispers, its ancient wisdom flowing through her veins. Yesen's life was far from easy. Her stepmother, though not wicked, was consumed by fear. Years ago, Yesen's parents had perished in a devastating storm, their fishing boat swallowed by the merciless waves. Ever since, her stepmother had forbidden Yesen from venturing too far into the ocean, believing the same fate awaited her. To keep Yesen grounded, her stepmother gave her endless chores, hoping to deter her from the sea's lure. But Yesen's heart belonged to the ocean, and no amount of work could keep her from visiting its shores. What her stepmother didn't know was that Yesen held a secret, one she guarded fiercely. She could speak to the fish. This gift wasn't just a peculiar talent. It was a connection to the ancient sea spirit, a protector of those who respected the ocean's balance. Yesen had learned of this gift as a child, when a fish had warned her of an approaching storm, saving her life. Since then, she had been a silent guardian of the sea's creatures, treating them with kindness and reverence. One fateful morning, as Yesen cast her nets near the rocky cove, she noticed a brilliant golden fish struggling against a trap laid by a poacher. Its scales shimmered like sunlight on water, and its eyes held a strange, intelligent sadness. Without hesitation, Yesen freed the fish, cradling it gently in her hands before releasing it back into the waves. Later that night, as the moonlight danced on the water, the golden fish returned. It spoke to her in a voice as fluid and soft as the waves. "You have shown kindness to the sea's children, Yesen. For this, I owe you a great debt. But I must warn you, danger looms over your village, not from the waves, but from the greed of men." Yesen listened intently as the fish revealed a dark plan. The town's governor, under the guise of organizing a grand festival to celebrate the sea, intended to seize the villagers' land. The festivities were a cover for his treachery. He would claim the land for himself, leaving the villagers homeless and destitute. Yesen's heart burned with anger, but she knew she couldn't fight this battle alone. The next few days were a blur of preparation. With the fish's guidance, Yesen fashioned a gown from the shimmering scales of the sea, a masterpiece that reflected the ocean's beauty. The golden fish gifted her a pair of pearl earrings, each one imbued with the essence of the sea spirit. "These pearls will connect you to the sea's power," the fish explained. "Wear them with courage." On the night of the festival, the harbor town transformed into a spectacle of lanterns and music. The governor and his family presided over the event from a grand pavilion, their wealth and power on full display. Yesen, dressed in her gown of shimmering scales, stepped into the crowd like a vision from the sea itself. Her presence was magnetic. Even the governor's son, a young man with a sharp mind and kind eyes, couldn't look away. Yesen used her newfound attention wisely. As she danced with the governor's son, she subtly probed him for information about his father's plans. She learned that the governor intended to announce the land seizure the next morning, disguising it as a decree for harbor expansion. It would devastate the villagers, forcing them to leave their homes and livelihoods behind. When the clock struck midnight, Yesen made her move. She slipped away from the pavilion, leaving behind one of her pearl earrings as she vanished into the crowd. The earring wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate signal to the sea spirit, a promise that the governor's family would soon face judgment for their greed. Back at the cove, Yesen returned to the golden fish. Together, they called upon the power of the sea spirit. The ocean responded with fury, its waves rising high and its winds howling through the night. By morning, The governor's ships, symbols of his wealth, were found wrecked in the harbor, their cargo lost to the depths. The governor's land decree mysteriously vanished, as if the sea itself had swallowed it. The villagers, unaware of Yesen's role, celebrated the strange turn of events. They believed the sea had protected them, and in a way, they were right. Yesen watched from the shadows, content to remain a quiet guardian. The governor's son, however, found the pearl earring and began searching for the mysterious maiden who had worn the gown of shimmering scales. But Yesen wasn't interested in love or recognition. Her heart belonged to the ocean, and her mission wasn't over. She had seen the lengths to which greed could go, and she vowed to continue protecting the sea and its people from those who would exploit it. Yesen's tale became a legend, a story passed down through generations in the harbor town. They spoke of the water maiden who could command the sea, who wore a gown made of its scales and left behind a single pearl to summon the ocean's wrath. The villagers built a shrine near the cove, honoring the sea spirit and the mysterious maiden who had saved them. For Yesen, life returned to its quiet rhythm. She continued fishing, her connection to the ocean as strong as ever. But on certain nights, when the moonlight kissed the waves, she would wear the remaining pearl earring and remember the night she stood against greed and betrayal. It wasn't a story of romance or royalty. It was a story of courage, justice, and the enduring bond between a girl and the sea. And so, Yesen lived not as a damsel in distress, but as a protector, a voice for the voiceless, and a keeper of the ocean's secrets. In the heart of the Ashanti kingdom, the golden savannas stretched endlessly under a sun that burned as brightly as the stories passed down through generations. In this land, storytelling was more than entertainment. It was a lifeblood, a way to preserve history, teach lessons, and connect with the ancestors. And no one told stories better than Nyami. Nyami, whose name meant gift of God, was a girl of extraordinary talent. She didn't just tell stories, she brought them to life. Her words could conjure images so vivid that listeners swore they could see the characters, feel the heat of a desert sun, or hear the crash of waves on distant shores. Her talent was unlike anything the Ashanti people had ever known, but it was also her curse. Nyami's stepmother, Abena, was an ambitious woman. She saw Nyami's gift not as a blessing, but as a tool to advance her own standing in the kingdom. Abena locked Nyami away, forcing her to create stories that she would present as her own. Nyami's voice was silenced, and her talent was exploited. But the girl of the hearth was not broken. Every year, the Ashanti kingdom held a grand storytelling festival, a celebration of creativity and wisdom. The winner of the festival would be granted a single wish by the king, a wish that could change their life forever. This year, Abena planned to win at any cost. She memorized Nyami's most dazzling tales and prepared to present them as her own. As the day of the festival approached, Nyami sat by the hearth in their small home, weaving threads of her stories into her kente cloth, a traditional Ashanti fabric. The golden threads shimmered in the firelight, reflecting the magic that lived within her. Though trapped, Nyami knew her time would come. On the day of the festival, the kingdom's great plaza was alive with excitement. Dancers moved to the rhythm of drums, traders displayed their wares, and the aroma of spiced meats and fresh fruit filled the air. The king sat on his golden stool, a symbol of Ashanti power, ready to hear the stories that would define this year's celebration. Abena took the stage, her voice steady and confident, as she began to tell the stories she had stolen. The crowd was enchanted at first, Her tales painted pictures of heroic journeys, wise elders, and magical lands. But as she continued, something strange began to happen. The stories started to falter, their vividness fading like a dream forgotten upon waking. The characters in her tales began to unravel, their forms flickering like shadows in the sunlight. Murmurs spread through the crowd as they realized that something was amiss. The stories seemed to resist her, as if they knew she was not their true creator. It was then that Nyami appeared, stepping into the plaza with a quiet grace that commanded attention. She wore a golden kente cloth woven with the threads of her stories, each one shimmering with life. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. Her voice, soft yet powerful, carried across the plaza. She told the tale of a girl who was silenced but refused to lose her voice. She spoke of betrayal and resilience, of the power of truth to overcome lies. As Nyami wove her narrative, the golden threads in her kente cloth glowed brighter, and the images of her stories came to life around her. The crowd watched in awe as a river appeared at her feet, flowing through the plaza, and a bird of fire soared above their heads. Her words painted a picture so vivid that the line between reality and imagination blurred. The king, moved by her story, stood from his golden stool. He addressed the crowd, declaring Nyami the true winner of the festival. "Your gift is not just in storytelling," he said. "It is in your courage to reclaim your voice and your truth of the people." In the days that followed, Zolushka became a symbol of revolution. The Tsar, stripped of his power, was forced to make amends. The people, inspired by Zolushka's courage, began to reclaim their own voices. Zolushka returned to her forge, but she was no longer just a smith. She was a leader, a visionary, and a beacon of hope. The enchanted glass boots, her greatest creation, remained in her possession, a reminder of the night she used her craft to change the course of history. As the storykeeper finished recounting these tales, they gazed into the mirror-like surface of the shattered glass slipper. "Cinderella," they whispered, "is not one person. She is all of us." The slipper reflected 1,000 faces, each one carrying the power of resilience, courage, and self-discovery. The storykeeper closed the chest, letting the tales seep back into the world, ready to inspire those who needed them most. And so, the story of Cinderella lived on, not as a single tale, but as a kaleidoscope of truths and secrets, each more powerful than the last. Dear story seekers, thank you for joining us on this magical journey through Cinderella's shocking secrets, twisted tales from around the world. Your time, imagination, and curiosity mean the world to us. Each tale we've shared is a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and self-discovery. Whether it was Ashen Putle's cunning, Mapari's quest for justice, Yesen's wisdom, Nyami's storytelling magic, or Zolushka's fiery revolution, these stories remind us that there's a spark of Cinderella in all of us. We hope these tales inspired you, moved you, and maybe even gave you a fresh perspective on stories you thought you knew. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Story Castle so you never miss another adventure. Thank you for letting us be part of your day. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and remember, every story has the power to change the world.